Estate Talk with your host, Ken Sax. This show is created for you, the consumer. Our goal is to empower you with information and education, thereby giving you the tools needed to make informed decisions when it comes to real estate. Real Estate Talk is brought to you by SpokaneHouseHunter.com. Now, here's your host, Ken Sax.
Well, welcome, folks. You are with Ken Sax, and this is Real Estate Talk. And my guest today is Rob Higgins here. Rob is the Executive Vice President for the Spokane Association of Realtors. And what are we going to talk about?
Well, Ken, we're going to talk. I think we're going to talk about the market as it exists in Spokane today.
Yeah, I mean, what else? So I'll ask Rob. I'll ask you the question that I'm asked probably a dozen times a day. How's the market?
Yeah, how's the market? Well, the Spokane Association of Realtors owns and operates the multiple listing service. So we have a real good supply of information on what's going on in the residential real estate market in Spokane. And it's a very robust market right now, but our headwind for this year and last year actually is lack of inventory. But we're seeing a lot of activity and sales, although down because of lack of inventory, are still at the higher level.
Sure. Now, you know, everything. I mean, inventory is a key statistic and key figure that we use in the market when we're talking with buyers and sellers. And when you say the market is really robust, what does that mean to our listeners? Does that mean what does that mean?
Well, what we look at are key lockbox openings,
okay,
and activity, pending sales, lockbox openings. That means people are out there showing property and writing up offers.
Right. So lockbox, what Rob means is the lockbox is what is on the front door usually and has the key to the house. And so the lockboxes record every time somebody like me, a licensee, I access the box to get the key to open the door to show to a buyer. That's all recorded. So we're able to see the trend on lockboxes. Are more of them being opened or less? Because the more they're being opened, of course, that would mean we're out there showing a lot of homes.
And the other neat thing about this electronic lockbox system, we have a state-of-the-art system, and it records when you go in and who's going in and all that kind of information. So it can be used for many different purposes. But one of the things I continually look at is month to month, how many lockbox openings do we see in the community? And that number was actually pretty high for August, higher than what I expected. So when I say robust, that's what I mean. There's a lot of activity out there in the market.
A lot of activity, a lot of lockbox activity. So do we see a trend? Do we see, you said that activity is increasing, and you mentioned inventory. So let's talk a little bit about inventory, because I said that's a really important and key stat that we look at. Where is inventory, and what does it mean to a layman like me? Let's say I'm debating if I should either buy or sell, and I keep hearing information on inventory, but what does that mean for me, the consumer?
Well, it really goes back to basic economics. It's supply and demand. If you have a lot of inventory out there, then it's easier for people to find houses to buy.
Sure, a lot of choices.
When we have a lot of choices. In the market today, we're at, from my experience, at an all-time low as far as inventory.
Okay.
Houses on the market. Under 300,000 is less than a month. So that means you put your house on the market, you're going to, if it's in that price range, you'll probably see some activity on it.
Sure. So less than a month. Now, what that means is when we say inventory is a month, we have a month's supply. What that means is at our current pace of sales, so let's say we have 100 units on the market, just to keep the number simple. Mm-hmm. We have 100 units on the market, and we are currently selling 50 units a month. We have 2 months inventory.
Right.
And so that's what inventory means. And when we say it's a month, that means there's not a lot on the market.
Right. We're actually on the market, when we last checked, was 961 properties, and we're selling around, well, this last month being August was the last month, we sold 869
Oh, my.
properties. So
Oh, my.
it's slightly, well, really, for the whole market, it's 1.1 month supply. At the lower end, it's less than that. At the higher end, it's more than that. It's more like a 3-month supply, but overall, we're at a 1.1 month supply.
Sure. So 1.1 month supply, who would that favor?
Well, typically they call that a seller's market.
Yes.
Because I don't have very many
Right.
to sell, and the price goes up, and that's what we're seeing. In the market today, or so far this year, we have our average price is up through August at 11%, and our median price up about the same, 11.5%. So we're seeing almost a percent a month increase in the average and median sales price.
Okay.
Now that doesn't mean value. That's a whole different issue, and we look to the Federal Housing Finance Agency to get a feel for what's going on in value. And the last quarterly report for the second quarter of 2019, the Spokane metropolitan area, or which includes Spokane and Spokane Valley and all the metropolitan area, we were 5th in the country out of 278 MSAs I look at as far as increase in value over the same quarter a year ago. And we're running about 11-12% increase in value.
Okay. And so, I like the inventory talk, because with inventory being 1 month and I'm a seller, I want to kind of bring that home for you out there if you're considering selling, and we'll talk about buyers. But if you're considering selling, this is key, because as a seller, and Rob mentioned supply and demand, there's not a lot of supply, so it's a beautiful time to be a seller, because as you said, a seller, I can be fairly firm on my price, because if you don't buy it, I'm okay with that. I have other buyers waiting to buy the house because they have nothing else to look at because supply is so low.
Right. Yeah.
So that's really key for a seller. But like I tell a lot of sellers, most sellers also then become buyers.
Correct.
And so now you're going to be on the other end of that pool thinking, what am I going to do?
Yeah, and that's part of the equation of when say, why do we have such a low inventory? One of the reasons is because if I want to sell, I look at see what's out there. Maybe there isn't a lot out there, so I think, well, we'll remodel the kitchen instead of moving into a new house.
That's right. That's right.
We'll stay put because there doesn't seem to be a big selection out there. So there are all kinds of things that impact the inventory. But certainly if you're selling and you have a place picked out, now has been the best time I've seen in 30 years.
Right,
probably.
that's right. And it's always interesting because, you'll get the buyers who maybe get a little upset or offended because the sellers are being so rigid.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell these buyers, it's just their time.
Yeah.
It's their time in the market. And it wasn't too long ago when we had kind of the opposite kind of market where, boy, the buyers were being pretty brutal and taking advantage of their time. So it's not that anybody's nice or mean or anything like that. It's just supply and demand is what it comes down to.
That's, people are always trying to figure it out. And I say, well, it's really pretty simple. When your supply is low and demand is high, because Spokane is growing, our job growth is very good right now, and we're growing as a metropolitan area, Spokane Valley, and so with that growth and a low supply, with demand high, it just makes for the perfect situation if you're a seller. On the
Yes.
flip side, though, then you become a buyer.
That's right. And with sellers, too, something I've noticed for months, and I don't know if you've seen this, overconfidence. Because these sellers, I want you to listen to this because I've seen it a lot, where, hey, I can ask anything I want on my house and somebody will buy it because there's no supply. And so I've seen a lot of sellers just outprice their property where it doesn't even make sense, and then their property sits and sits and sits. And now I'm seeing all these price reductions. So sellers, yes, there's an absolute opportunity for you, but you have to be smart about it.
Yeah, you gotta find the market.
Yes.
And talk to your realtor, and they can assist you in the CMA or competitive market analysis
Right.
and come up with a reasonable number. But if you're overpriced, you'll find out.
Yes,
Quickly.
you'll
find out. Things are not moving. What do you mean? I thought it was a 30-day supply or
Right.
slightly over a month. Well, if it's sitting there, it probably means you're overpriced.
Yes, and I just had this conversation this week with a seller whose house I just put on, and I said, look, if we go 10 to 14 days and we don't get any activity, we are grossly or offensively overpriced.
Yeah.
The market speaks to you.
Absolutely. The market supplies you the information. And in today's technology, the way you put a house on the market, there's 2,000 agents that know about it, plus all their buyers.
Right.
They're in a database, and they get notified that this house is on the market. And if you're not getting some activity pretty quickly, then you hit the market too high price.
That's right. Well, and it also, and this, I always say there's a whiteboard I want, but there's also the dynamic with these sellers who overprice their house. Your buyer, depending on how overpriced you are, your buyer may not ever see your house, and you are helping the other sellers sell their house in the higher price ranges. Mm-hmm. Because that buyer who is, let's just say they're in the 200 range and you're priced at 240, let's just say, they are looking at homes appropriately priced in 200. They're not even seeing your house. And then the buyers that are in the 240 range, they then go into your house and say, this doesn't compare to anything we've looked at. Mm-hmm. You're overpriced. Your house sits, and your buyer never sees it because they're looking at homes in their price range.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's and someone like you with your experience of buying and selling,
right,
helping clients buy and sell their house. I mean, what you're saying is exactly true, and it's the clear message that sometimes, I don't want to listen to that. We're going out at the high end.
Right, exactly. And that's key. Listen to first choose a realtor that you trust, who's competent, and then when you do that, listen to them. So I'm getting the wave from the producer. We are going to roll into our first 1 minute break here. When we come back here with Rob Higgins, Executive Vice President with the Spokane Association of Realtors, we're going to talk about where we see the market going, Rob, when we come back from our break. You're listening to Real Estate Talk with Ken Sax.
Great.
To help you be safe, Washington state law requires you to call 811 2 full business days before you plan, for example, to dig, drill, plow, pull from, or pound anything into the ground. Be prepared to provide the operator with the correct address, cross street, and a description of your work. You must mark the dig area with white paint. The operator will inform you of the utilities notified of your impending excavation. Wait for all their marks. Be safe and dig with care.
Welcome to a new kind of talk show, Spokane Talks, where you find news, views, and conversations that include respect for opinions, facts, and diversity.
Spokane Talks, Saturdays at 8 a.m. on Fox 28.
Welcome back. I am your host, Ken Sax. You are listening to Real Estate Talk, and my guest today is Rob Higgins, Executive Vice President, Spokane Association of Realtors. We've been talking about what else? The real estate market, kind of where we are right now, and we've talked about inventory, which is a key figure to talk about and to understand. And as I said, as we rolled out into our break, let's talk about, Rob, where do we think we're going? Let's crystal ball. Like, we need props. I need a crystal ball here so that we can predict where the heck are we going?
Well, it's going to be an interesting year ahead of us. Right now sales are down through the year 11.3%. that sounds like a big number, but when we've been hitting the headwinds of the inventory, lack of supply, it doesn't surprise me. But this last month, our sales were down only 5%, and we actually saw a slight uptick in our inventory. So I think we're going to see perhaps more inventory, get in a little better shape. But next year, we shouldn't expect, not any big changes. Probably very similar to what we experienced this year.
Sure. Now, do you see, with inventory being so low, might that be a reason we're seeing a lot of builders out there trying to get units on the market?
Yeah. One of the significant things that happened in the last year was we had a national home builder come into Spokane. That's the first time I've ever seen that. They partnered with a company here in Spokane, and they're building, I think they were talking in the Spokane region to build a couple hundred homes. And next year it's going to be more than that. So hopefully we're going to see our building activity pick up. It's kind of stagnant for the last 3 years. We're running right about 1,550 building permits, single-family building permits for the last 3 years. To put that in perspective, prior to the downturn, we got up as high as 2,300 building permits, and probably averaged for the 6 years going into 2008, let's say, we averaged probably about 1,850 building permits per year. And we're down about 1,550. So, and the community's getting bigger, so we're not meeting demand.
Well, that's just what I was thinking about. So we're seeing builders build, but do we expect to see much change in our activity? Because we're getting, I don't see much of a slowdown in demand because of what's happening here locally. Right. And, the Amazon and people coming to Spokane for work and getting out of the big cities, kind of like I did a long time ago. There still seems to be a current draw, and looking into the future, I don't see that draw really changing.
No, in fact, I think it's going to accelerate. I think Spokane is poised for prosperity, to take a term from years past. But I think Spokane is really in a position to take advantage of the congestion in the major metropolitan areas on the West Coast. And if we can provide jobs, because that's the key.
That's the key.
If we can provide the jobs, and so far our job growth has been very good in the Spokane community, you're going to see Spokane continue to grow. There'll be some people saying, well, it's now time to move.
Sure.
because it's getting too congested.
Sure.
But believe me, it's going to happen. It's happened everywhere else,
yes.
And there's no reason it's not going to eventually happen here.
Yeah, no, I think back the other month, I took my family down to Southern Cal, where I'm from. And, our kids, first time they had been down there, actually first time to where they could understand, where they are. And I was getting a lot of pushback from my now 14-year-old daughter. Why did you move? Why did you move? So, going on to all this stuff. Every place we went, we are stopped on the freeway.
Yeah.
I said, honey, this is one reason we left. This is one reason we left.
Right.
So, we came up here just to get away from that. But like you said, there's going to be people, if there aren't already, saying, you know what, this is becoming too big of a city, and we're going to leave. But still, all of the major metropolitan areas and the congestion and the high prices of real estate and all that, that's just going to keep being a draw. But like you said, we need jobs. But we're getting that because we're getting some big companies moving here.
And we're still priced. This is hard for some people to believe,
yes.
But if you look at the median sales price in the United States, we're probably about $20,000 under that. So we're still, from a price standpoint, wow, your prices are really favorable. So all indications are that next year we should have a year similar to this. And then once we start meeting the supply side of the equation, because the demand is going to be there, we're going to see those numbers grow and grow.
Yes, I I use the term equity refugee, where we can leave a major metropolitan area, sell our house, our 1,500 square foot, no basement, in the middle of Glendale for $850,000, and come here and buy a 4,000 square foot house on half an acre to an acre for $400,000 cash.
Yeah.
So that is what I mean by equity refugees, and that's an opportunity.
Well, and we saw that a lot in the really early 90s, but we didn't have the job growth.
Right.
And so if in California there were people moving to the Northwest with tons of equity, oh, that's all right. If it takes me a couple of years, I'll find a job.
Sure.
And they were here a couple of years, and then the real estate market was flat. Job growth was minimal, and many of them ended up going back.
Sure.
This time, I think it's different. We're going to see that coming in, but we have job growth in Spokane.
We're growing up.
We're growing. Yes, we're becoming. Well, we the metropolitan area exceeded 500,000. I think it was in 2017, and we're increasing, believe it or not, faster than the rest of the state in population.
Yeah, good. So we have about 2 minutes left. So we've talked about the market, where we are, where we project we're going. We've talked about inventory, sellers. I mentioned the advantages, but word of caution: be reasonable. Buyers, gosh, if I want to buy right now, am I getting discouraged? Should I maybe not?
No, you buy a house. My favorite thing to say is when Grandma and Grandpa are sitting on the front porch after they've lived in their house for 30 years, eating their oatmeal in their rocking chair. Aren't we glad we bought a house? Now we got something to give to our kids or to pass on to whoever. So home ownership is critically important. And the affordability issue is the issue that's going to come to us.
Right.
And we need to, and is already here, we need to figure out ways, the market needs to figure out ways to address that.
Sure, and rates, to many people's surprise, went down not too long ago.
Right.
So, the purchase power is really in your advantage, buyers. But like Rob said, that's kind of the pathway to wealth. Is real estate.
Well, for middle America,
yes,
working from paycheck to paycheck at the factory or whatever, boy, I'm glad I bought a house when I turn around and look back. So I tell everybody I know, the young people, try to figure out a way to get into home ownership.
Yes, and I'll leave you with this. If I could do it again, and I've shared this with a lot of younger folks, I would have bought a duplex, and I would have had my tenant pay my mortgage. And then I would have started spinning that off into bigger and bigger properties, holding on to that first duplex. So there's a takeaway for you. Any parting words, Rob?
No, I say listen to what he just said, because I watched that happen in my career in real estate, and it's worked for many people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my guest today has been Rob Higgins, the Executive Vice President with the Spokane Association of Realtors. Folks, I appreciate, as always, you joining us, and we will see you next time on Real Estate Talk with your host, Ken Sax.
Thanks for watching. Real Estate Talk is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksMedia.com, which is solely responsible for its content. Real Estate Talk is sponsored by SpokaneHouseHunter.com. Ask Ken a question, recommend a guest, or hear this program again on Facebook, YouTube,